Dr. Tanya Stevanin is the co-founder of the Sheffield Spiritist Group and the first person to bring Spiritism to Sheffield. Before that, she worked in London with the Allan Kardec Spiritist Center. She has a PhD in microbiology and a diploma in psychology. For the past 11 years, she has been working in the treatment of people with substance misuse, the past 10 with the NHS.
And Tanya will be talking today about choices. It's with you, Tanya.
Okay,
Sorry
let me
for the long introduction, but
no problem.
you know.
I'll just share my screen so that I only have 4 slides. So the first 2 slides, the top one is showing different types of plastic, like bottles, CD, um, a clock, a jar, and the one at the bottom is just a pile of plastic waste on a beach. So I thought I'm not going to, I think the first thing that it's important to make clear from the beginning is that often in these talks, we hope to end the talk with some questions answered. I'm not going to answer any questions. I am going to raise questions. And the idea of this talk is not to offer solutions or ready answers, not even spiritist ones or from psychology or microbiology. It's about raising questions, mostly because, I chose this topic of choice because, choice can also be interpreted as free will. Free will gives us choice, the choice to choose our pathway, to choose the options from a variety of options, which one we are going to go for. And this talk is inspired by an article that I came across on the BBC webpage a few months ago by someone called Tim Harford. And he was raising some very key issues at the time. It was very soon after a very successful documentary by Sir David Attenborough about the planet, and showing specifically plastic pollution and the effect of plastic pollution on animal life, on sea life, and the planet as a whole. And then it generated a whole lot of debate, which probably would still be the main topic of discussions if it hasn't been overtaken by the COVID-19 pandemic. But fact is, it's still a very current issue, and it goes very much to the heart of, for me, what is to be a spiritist and our responsibility as spiritists in terms of how we utilize the resources here in this planet. The other thing I want to make very clear is that this is a non-judgmental talk. Okay, I will raise subjects that will, people differ in their opinion about which way to go, what is right, what is wrong, and I will use examples that some people may feel closer to their hearts or not, or disagree very much with. I hope that I will be presenting facts that can then be checked up by others if any of you want to do that. But it's about raising questions for ourselves about how we behave and how we make choices. When I was studying psychology, one topic that I was surprised about was the topic of choice. And basically what the research suggests is that we are very happy. We are not happy when we don't have choice at all, when we feel forced into a pattern of behavior which is not of our choosing. But on the other hand, we are not very happy when we have too much choice, because it creates confusion. So the more choice we have, the more confused we get, the unhappier we become. If we have a very limited number of choices, do I want banana or do I want apple for breakfast? It's easy. Give me a whole range of fruits and I get confused. The mind gets confused. And then unhappiness is generated. And the interesting thing is, we often then become unhappy with the choice we make. So too much choice is bad for us, and that's probably why human beings get it so wrong, because God gives us as many choices as there exist in the universe, but that's for us to learn to use reason as well. So the first part of my presentation, I'm going to summarize some of the findings presented in this article, which is in itself a summary of the historical aspects of plastic use here on Earth. And then it will go deeper into the more philosophical, psychological areas. And then, if you want to stop and ask questions, please feel free to do so. But for the first half, I think it will be easier if I just summarize the article, and then we can go into the more philosophical aspects. I'll let you know. So just a bit of history for you. So the first commercially viable version of plastic or something related to plastic begins in 1904. And it's an interesting, usually these things come about almost by accident. And in this case, there was a Swiss chemist called Jack Brandesberger. I apologize for those who can speak those names better than I do. He was having dinner at a very high-class restaurant in France, and another customer spilled a glass of red wine onto beautifully pristine linen table cover, and destroyed it. And he was thinking, surely there must be a way in which we can do something that would prevent this beautiful linen to be completely destroyed. So he went back and he started thinking about it and playing around in his lab, and he came across, he decided to spray the material with cellulose spray cellulose on the tablecloth. But what he found is that it peeled off in transparent sheets of cellulose. So it wasn't good for what he was trying to do. However, what he or others found out then is that there were other uses that he could apply it to. And one of the uses that it was applied to was during World War I, making eyepieces for gas masks. Okay, so he called his invention cellophane. And cellophane is still used nowadays, usually wrapping presents and things. And in 1923, he sold the rights to DuPont, an American corporation. But there was a problem. Some customers were not happy because although cellophane is waterproof, it's not moisture proof. So if you wrap sweets, candies in that, it gets, sticks to it. Knives would rust in it, and it would create all kinds of other problems. So DuPont gave the task to sort this problem out to a 27-year-old chemist, William Hale Church, to find a solution. And within a year, he had done it. And the timing could not be better. It was 1930s, and supermarkets were changing, and customers now, they wanted to be able to choose their food without queuing up to get it, and being able to display food in supermarkets in a way that people could see it, but they didn't have to handle it, helped to move on with a different client base. And the cellophane let customers choose the food on the basis of how it looked and preserving their hygiene. But cellophane would soon fall out of fashion as well, and be overtaken by the likes of, how try to pronounce it, is polyvinyl iodine chloride. And like its predecessor, this was an accidental discovery. This material was first used in conflict, again during war, and it was used to make waterproofing fighter planes in World War II. And it was originally green and smelled really, really bad. So not very good if you want to wrap nice smelling food in it. But they carried on researching on it and developing it. And soon it developed into what was then called saran wrap. Nowadays, we know it as cling film. And I cannot imagine my life without cling film. I cannot imagine many things without cling film because it is still very much used for all kinds of purposes today. So let me see if I can move to the next slide. I'm not being able to change the slide.
You did.
Ah, did I? Oh, okay. So
And now
okay.
that one.
I think, let's see. Yeah, so that's the one. So this second slide contains two halves. The top half is a bunch of tomatoes wrapped up in cling film or something very similar. And the one underneath is someone carrying a box, a wooden box with fruit, not wrapped in anything, just exposed to air, no wrappings at all. So the question here that the article moves on to, and is it plastic really the enemy? So let's have a look at that. Okay, so depending how much, so this is the facts now, depending how much of the heavier recyclable packaging would in practice, in reality, be recycled, the lighter non-recyclable packaging may actually generate less waste. So that's given me food for thought, because when I go to the supermarket, I choose things that has the recyclable logo and I recycle it religiously in the hope that I am doing something good for the planet. And it made me think, okay, am I really? Because I don't know what happens to this material once it leaves my home. I don't know if it is really recycled. I don't know if it is properly recycled. I don't really know what happens afterwards. So that's the first question mark there. Some packaging is unnecessary, but a lot of the packaging that we use is probably very useful. One of the examples used in this article is cucumbers wrapped in something, you know, like the plastic cover, a bit like cling film, or a version of it. And it states that a cucumber that's not wrapped in any packaging of this nature would only last on the shelf for about 3 days. When wrapped up, it lasts up to 14 days. And then you can take it home and it will last for a few more days in the fridge. So the lifetime of a cucumber is much longer when you have some wrappings to protect it. Also, it asks the question, is it worth to use 1.5 grams of plastic wrap on or lose an entire cucumber, as an example? Okay, fruit like bananas, when wrapped, when in a plastic bag, they will last much longer. It will take longer for them to start going brown, and that also prolongs the shelf life of bananas as well as many other types of fruit. In fact, about a decade ago, one of the UK supermarkets experimented with taking all its fruit and vegetables out of their packaging, and its food wastage doubled. The rate of wastage, food wastage, doubled. And it's not just the shelf life. What about waste created before food gets to the shop? Another supermarket responding to criticism for putting apples in plastic wrap, and that's what the example there suggests in the slides, tried selling them loose from big cardboard boxes, but so many were damaged in transit that the approach used more packaging per apple that's sold than when they actually put the apples in a plastic bag. Another thing that's been very popular recently, you know, the bag for life kind of thing, at least here in the UK, the supermarkets are no longer providing free plastic bags with shopping. If you want a plastic bag, you either take one home from home with you, or you buy one at the supermarket. And supermarkets encourage people to buy what is here named bags for life, meaning a bag that you can reuse. It's not single-use plastic. So I study, and this is I found even more shocking, because I knew already that the choice between a plastic bag that I could use a few times and a cotton bag was not as simple as it seemed. I had enough knowledge of the processing of these two materials to know that I wasn't necessarily being terribly good for the environment, picking a cotton bag rather than a plastic bag, depending on how many times I used it, each of them. But the real numbers really shocked me when I read this article, because a plastic bag, if we need to use it 52 times, at least 52 times, to justify all the energy, the pollution, everything that is generated before and after the production of the bag. So you'd think, yeah, let's go for a cotton one then, or a synthetic one. So a cotton bag, or an organic cotton bag, I would need to use it 20,000 times to justify its production. So between 52 and 20,000 times, that's a big difference. So we have to consider our options. This last slide shows a face mask that's being discarded or lost. The question here is, we want to have choice, and we are making choices every day. God gives us free will, but Spiritism, the spirits, tell us very clearly, Spiritists, educate yourselves. And the educate yourselves is really the key point in this talk. Because the information I have just offered to you is to encourage thinking. When we are making a choice, rather than just go along with the flow, go along with the fashion of the moment, or go along with what my WhatsApp, my Facebook, my Twitter feeds tell me, we have a duty, a responsibility to do the research ourselves. This, I can provide you the details about this article, and you can go back and read it yourselves, and I'm very happy for everybody to do that. Because when we are making a choice, and choice is not as simple as it seems sometimes, and from now on, please feel free to interrupt me and ask questions, because now we enter the topic of opinion as well, because that is the thing that is the greatest problem I find with the world as we are living at the moment. We are constantly bombarded by opinion, not facts, opinions, people's opinions. Everybody with a smartphone, a computer, can send out thousands of messages across the world about what they think is right and what they think is wrong. And it is very difficult to choose sometimes. I gave a summary of, a shorter version of this talk to our group when I first came across this article. And one of the examples that I used at the time was eggs. So not plastic anymore, eggs, food. Because in our group, we have single people living on their own with decent jobs, decent pay, who can make decisions when we go to the supermarket to buy organic, free range eggs that cost here in the UK up to £2.53 per 6 eggs. And next door, there's a supermarket that will sell a dozen eggs for £1 or even less than £1 sometimes. I could go and buy the £3, 6 eggs, take it home and feel extremely smug and very proud of myself, because I am supporting the free range farming, protecting the animals, protecting the welfare of the chicken. I don't really know how these chicken are raised and kept because I don't go to those farms. I believe in what is written on the package because I don't have direct access to how they are kept. But I can go home feeling very, very virtuous because I made that choice. And I can look next to me, someone buying the dozen eggs for £1 and feel like, oh, they are bad people. They are not, they are selfish. They are not supporting the welfare of animals. But what do I know about this person? As I was saying, within our group, we have people who are alone, who have good salaries, and we have people with large families on a very low income. Who am I to judge the choices that this other person, the person sitting next to me, is making? How am I making my choices? What information am I basing my choices on? Everybody's being encouraged to use face masks now because of the pandemic. I wear one when I go into, here in the UK, you don't have to wear them everywhere, but if you go into any public space, you are supposed to wear them. So I wear them. Where I work, it's a health service. So we're not allowed to move around without a face mask. So we are wearing face masks. And me and my team leader, we use our face masks until they really cannot be used anymore. And then we dispose them in the appropriate place. I have come across other people within the same environment where I work that every time they go past a box of face masks, they pick up one. And 5 minutes later, they are throwing them away, often in inappropriate locations. And then I ask myself, what are we doing? How are we making those choices? We are just thinking about ourselves. Are we thinking about the planet? How do we do the best we can with the information we have? And the key aspect is search for information, search for data, and always ask yourselves, we ask ourselves, what are our options? If I can take a plastic bag to the supermarket and use the same plastic bag time and time again for as many times as I possibly can and dispose of it when it cannot be used anymore in as good a way as I can. If it can be recycled, then recycle it. If I can make small choices, personal choices, that means I can support animal welfare by buying something organic or free range and pay a bit more for it, then all of us should do that. But we should not judge others who cannot make the same choices. Also, because we don't really have all the facts. And it is important for us to forgive ourselves when we would like to make what we possibly consider a better choice, a more environmentally friendly choice, but we cannot. Because there has been times in which I was very short of money and I bought the cheaper eggs. I needed to eat and I bought the cheaper eggs. When my situation improved and I could buy these more expensive ones, then I got the more expensive ones. Choice varies according to time as well. And we live in a world where it's very difficult sometimes to make the right choices because of peer pressure, because of all these opinions, because these are not information. Even when we watch the news on television, I pay attention when I'm watching the news, and more often than not, there is 5% of facts, and the rest is reporters talking to each other, asking each other's opinions. So I go back to what the spirits tell us. Spiritists, educate yourselves. When we make a choice, we will face the consequences for our choices, but we shouldn't live in fear of it. If we stop for a moment and ask ourselves, if someone else was making the same choice, how would I be judging them? And judgment is a dangerous thing, because Jesus told us, do not judge, because with the same harshness that we judge others, we shall be judged. We are mirrors of each other. We reflect each other. We are reflected on each other. So let's not judge others for their choices. There is still a lot of bad feelings when we have different perspectives, different beliefs, political beliefs, religious beliefs. I come from a normal family where everybody is very opinionated, very headstrong, and I've learned over the years that with my sister, I don't talk about religion. With my brother, I don't talk about politics, because it always ends in an argument, because they will fight for their corner and I will fight my corner, and we'll end up arguing, but we love each other. So the best way to have a harmonious life is to accept that we have different opinions, and we are entitled to our opinions, and respect each other's opinions, respect each other's choices. We live in a world that there are so many choices, that we go to the supermarket and there's so much that we can choose from. So let's take a second just to ask ourselves sometimes, how am I making this choice? What information do I have? And look for what is important for us. For some people, it's the level of sugar. For some people, it's the level of fat. For some people, it's the packaging. Making choices is not easy, because unfortunately, we don't have we don't have the complete picture. Most of the times, we have the picture that is imposed upon us by the media, by the advertising industry. We also know one of the reasons why we like certain pieces of music is because when a new recording is launched, or a new music is launched, the companies that have more money to pay for the radio stations to play that music more often usually do better. Why? Because as we hear a piece of music for the first time, the way it is registered in our brains that it is strange. I don't know this tune. I'm not sure I like it. The more we hear it, the more we listen to it, our brain registers it as something familiar. And something familiar is often decoded as enjoyable. So we end up buying the download or the CD because we like it. Now we like it because we heard it enough times. So if we keep getting the same information time and time again, even if it is misinformation, it starts registering as familiarity, so it must be true. So let's, as a spiritist, I think we more than others, without the knowledge that we have, and because our knowledge does not end with what happens in this world, our knowledge extrapolates, and we understand, we have a better understanding of what happens after, and of the responsibilities we have in terms of returning to this planet as well. Then let's be more savvy in terms of not falling for this sales pitch. Let's ask the right questions and keep informing ourselves. There is a lot of information. I often use sites that, like there is Google Scholar, for example. You can type keywords about plastic waste or how to recycle plastic on Google, and you come across a series of posts or information. But if you use Google Scholar, you come across papers, scientific peer-reviewed papers, articles of scientists that have done research. I'm not saying that they are absolutely right. However, you will be exposed to a more logical and realistic piece of information that you can then judge for yourselves. So it's less opinion and more fact. We'll never have all the facts, but if we can at least be a bit more selective and ask questions, how much this source is trustworthy for me to go along with it, remembering that choice is not a simple thing. We get it wrong, we get it right, and sometimes what we think is best because it became the fashion of, the flavor of the month may not necessarily be so. So let's dig a little bit deeper and look at the situation from a more spiritual, long-term perspective rather than the short-term, this is the fashion now. I'm saying this going back to the example of plastic and paper. Here in the UK, there are many outlets that are trying to make the transition between plastic bags and paper bags. The problem with paper bags is that they break more easily. If they get wet, they disintegrate. To make them sturdy enough to carry the stuff that we like carrying plastic bags, you need to use something that makes it much less recyclable, if recyclable at all. So you're just substituting something that is as bad as the thing you're substituting it for, because supermarkets want to sell, people want to sell, so they're not necessarily good. The other thing about paper is paper uses a lot of chemicals to be produced, so you need to plant the seed, grow the tree, chop the tree, process the material, and it uses, in the processing, it loses a lot of water and a lot of very toxic materials, toxic chemicals that has to go somewhere. They end up in rivers, that end up in the sea. The nice, lovely white paper that we all love so much uses a lot of bleach to get to that color. Otherwise, it is brown, not very appealing looking, but it's the brown paper that is recyclable. The white paper can be recycled, but it uses a lot of very dangerous toxic chemicals to be produced. That goes to rivers, that goes to sea, that goes to fish, and eventually comes back to us. So sometimes the solution is not as simple as it seems. So rather than just following the fashion, let's ask ourselves, what choices do I have to make today? And every day we make choices. We make choices as what we're going to have for breakfast, what packaging I'm going to use to wrap up my sandwich, and sometimes buying a plastic box that I will use for 20 years is better than wrapping it in a piece of paper that I'm going to throw away at the end of the day. And then 20 years later, if I'm doing that, how much waste will I have created? I could still have the same box. So when making choices, stop, think for a second, rather than just go with the latest opinion in our Twitter feed or our Facebook page, and ask our questions that are more long lasting, and also think about the environment, not just in this generation, but for the future as well. So I am open to questions at any point.
Yeah. Ruth has a question, Tanya, so let me open to Ruth.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ruth.
Hi, Tanya. Yeah, this is a great topic. I want to thank you because there is so many misunderstanding about the use of bags, and so many pros and so many cons. And well, my husband is a volunteer firefighter, and he went to a lecture about fires, like the solar panels, and how they are very easy to be caught on fire, and how long. So during this lecture, they learned that it takes decades to get rid of the waste of those solar panels. And it kind of goes with your topic, because that's also, is so sold by everyone. Oh, this is, renewable resources. And in the end, we don't know what is going to happen with those panels. We don't know what, like you said, we don't know when we recycle something, where it's going, if it's really being recycled. My question to you is that when you said about so many times, like 52, you have to use 52 times the plastic bag, and then I forgot how many thousand times the reusable bags. What do you mean, like to produce that? That's the part that I didn't really understand.
So to produce different materials, it takes a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of raw materials, and that takes away from the environment. And then there is the wastage that is created as well to produce each individual item. So in average, to produce a plastic bag, one of the more sturdy ones that we use here in the UK, you would need to use the same bag at least 52 times to justify the materials used and the wastage, the waste produced, compared to 20,000 times for a organic cotton bag. One thing that a lot of people don't know, the fashion industry is probably the most polluting industry that exists at the moment, because this fast fashion habit that we have created of buying it's so cheap, but cheap comes at a very, very high environmental price. In the past, most people would have 2 to 3 dresses, the Sunday dress, the every day of the week dress, and maybe an extra one. And we would use those dresses or trousers or jumpers until they kind of started disintegrating and could not, we couldn't repair them anymore. Then you would cast it away and buy a new one, because it was expensive and most people didn't have money to buy clothes that we didn't use. Nowadays, everybody has money to buy more clothes than we need. So we lost sense of how much it actually costs to produce. It's not the price we pay that is the cost of that garment. It's how much raw materials we are taking away from the earth and how much pollution we are creating, the amount of water that is used to generate the little tops, the little dresses, the beautiful little things that we buy a few pennies here and there, cost the environment a very high price. And this environment is not a hypothetical thing. This is the air we breathe, this is the water we drink, this is the foods that we'll need, the soil we need to grow the food we need to survive. So the cost of the items of whatever we use is not the same as the price we pay for it in the supermarket. And I think, this is something that is important for us to keep in mind. We still need to live in this world, okay? I'm not telling you, I don't want anybody to leave this meeting today feeling so guilty that, you don't go and enjoy life. Life is to be enjoyed as well. And the spirits tell us, we live in a material world. We are entitled to use and enjoy the material resources of this world. Enjoy, yes. Waste, no. So it's about, being a bit more aware of the choices we make and how we are making those choices.
Thank you.
So we have a question here. Let me read. we never know at first hand if we're choosing really the right choice. So the best way to better choose among many options is to use the best of your knowledge at the moment and your best good intentions. If you make a bad choice, learn from it, don't repeat the act, and try to teach people around you what you have learned. Is that it?
Absolutely. I had once I was sharing a flat with someone who was doing a PhD in, I think it was about recycling. I can't remember exactly, but recycling was a big part of this person's PhD study. And we were watching TV one day, and there was something about recycling on television. She turns to me and says, "It's a waste of time because most of it ends up in landfills. It's a, it's a fact. People think they're doing so well, and they're not." And then I stopped and I looked at her, and I thought, the irony, you're doing a PhD on this. Is there something positive you can tell me? Because what the question here suggests is absolutely right. We don't have all the facts. So the best we can do is to do as well as we can with the information we have and continue to inform ourselves. So when I go to the supermarket, if there are two of the same thing, one is wrapped in what states to be recyclable and one in something that is not recyclable, I still take the recyclable one home and I will recycle what I can of that material. I went to my local grocers recently and they had two cauliflowers. They had the organic one, which was really small, very expensive, and didn't look very healthy. And then they had this massive cauliflower that looked absolutely wonderful, and it was cheaper and could feed more people. I did take home the bigger one because I felt that it was on balance, it was better value, not just for money, but for the environment. Because what I know is that cauliflower, because the thing about organic, and it's an interesting one that I by no means have all the answers here, guys. I am just as you are, finding my way in this forest of options and pitfalls. But there are certain methods of production now that are being developed, like the artificial farms, for example, that they are not necessarily, they can't be described as organic because they are industrial, but they are not farms as, it's a building with, you feed the plant with the right nutrients and the right amount of light and it grows. And I think that in future, that's what we are going to end up with, because it would then leave the land for trees and flowers and birds, and we won't be using that resource anymore. So it's still it's work in progress. So we just do the best we can with the information we have, but let's keep digging for more and more information so we can make more and more informed decisions.
Thanks, Tanya. Ju, you have a comment, question?
Yeah, I think that what the topic that Tanya is bringing to us is so important. And some of you may be wondering, why are we talking about it in a Spiritist gathering? And this is the mentality of the new being. We constantly are talking about the planetary transition, the new era. Now we talk about we are in the 21st century and all of that. I mean, if we do not start with the simple things, I mean, we see that it's not that simple because there are so enrooted in us, all the what we have been doing, or the carelessness that we have been presenting from previous eras. But now I think it is something that it is within our reach. It is a model that the Spiritists should follow, because it represents the consciousness, and at the same time it's like our seal of approval in terms of reincarnation. because I'm caring about this planet. I'm caring about a new, more healthy way of living, because I know that I am going to be inheriting this planet over and over again on several incarnations. And I wanted to find it better, not worse. But it's up to me to do that. So, this new way of thinking, consciousness that spiritists have to develop are much more profound and encompasses many more things than just the aspect of, us becoming religious or knowing by heart the teachings of Jesus. It shows our consideration in relation to everything, to others and to our planet and to what we are going to be gathering in the future. So it's adamant for us to start thinking about it and then start incorporating in our day-to-day lives those examples.
Jim, you have a question?
Actually, I wanted to kind of dovetail off to what Gisara was saying about we as a society, we are so influenced by mass media manipulation. I remember in the 1970s, there was and some of you also may remember this as well. There was a media campaign back when we only had 3 TV stations or 3 networks, right? NBC, CBS, ABC, and it was a big campaign on pollution. And if I Googled it, I could find the fellow's name. It was an American Indian fellow. And the shot was of this American Indian fellow looking at a pile of garbage and a single tear coming down from his eye. That's when I first remember, being influenced by mass media as far as, okay, we're throwing this garbage, look what we're doing to the planet, and now we're switching. And we saw, the evolution of, cleaning up the planet. Really, that's when it started for me. But also so there was the influence in a good way, right? So, but if you think about in the spiritist realm, being influenced by, you have the good spirits and the bad spirits. And we as spiritists, we know they are there, right? It's just, you have that choice to either go the good way or the not so good way. So I see the correlation here as being, and I don't, in the spiritist realm, I don't, well, I guess it is. Would you consider that to be manipulation by either of those spirits?
Anya.
Oh, that is a very, very important point to raise, actually, because yes, the answer is yes. What we are seeing at the moment is the final struggle. We talk about the transition that the planet is going through and this fight between good and evil. So basically, there is I was a few months ago, because Syria has already come out of our news here in the UK. We hardly ever hear about the conflict in Syria. But at the time when it was on the main news all the time, there was a piece that really illustrates that to me did speak quite loudly. And it was an interview with the wife of the president. I can't remember her name now, but she's of mixed heritage. She's English as well. And she mentioned that her children, she said, I have no illusions that if we lose, we are not going to survive, and I'm going to fight for my children. And I brought that up to our group because I was saying, if you're cornered and you know that if you lose everything, including the life of your children, you're going to fight to the end. And if we extrapolate that to the spiritual transition that we are going through, the group of spirits that have kind of controlled a lot of the behaviors here on Earth, they're losing ground because the benefactors, the higher spirits, are coming closer and speeding up this transition. And that's why this greater awareness, you see very young children speaking so eloquently about very complex issues and teaching their parents what direction to go. So, you know, we know that this is happening, but the old school, the other spirits, the ones that are still enamored of the darkness, they are going to fight, and they're going to use whatever means necessary to try and manipulate our views. And they will, you know, and social media, mass media is such an easy target. Because nowadays you inspire someone who is vulnerable, and that goes viral. Now it's everywhere. It's like the pandemic that we're seeing, the physical virus that attacks and can kill people. There are psychological, emotional viruses that can be spread out. And we have to be very aware of it. So that's why, you know, being more judgmental in terms of what am I going to read today? What am I going to watch today? What opinions am I going to follow? And ask ourselves, you know, where is this coming from spiritually? Where does it fit in the spiritual hierarchy? I think as spiritists, we have an obligation to be aware of that as well.
Thanks, Tanya. Yeah, and I think, you know, I like to always look with half glass full, right? The fact that we are discussing it, like Jim said, in the middle of the 70s, nobody was even discussing it. So it started there, and now we are much more aware of it. We are discussing it, and we are seeing the consequences, and we are being able to deal with the consequences. So I think this is a sign of evolution of us as a society, that we are able to see the damage that we are doing to our environment, and we are able to look for solutions. But I really like your approach in terms of don't just go directly for what the media is telling you to do, discard the plastic bags, use the recyclable bags. Well, let's look a little bit further, and let's try to be rational. And I think that's what Spiritism always invites us to analyze, to reason. That's what Kardec left with us mostly, is reason, analyze, judge for yourselves, right? And that's what's always very important. So a little bit further into the going a little bit towards the climate change. What have you been learning different from what's out there, or the same as out there? Have you seen, because a lot of the discussions nowadays, especially here in this country with elections 10 days away, and one side clearly not caring about climate change, and the other side clearly concerned a little about climate change. Can you talk a little bit about it, something, or?
Yeah. I think the climate change, to me, it falls very close to the category of God. Whether we believe it or not, it doesn't change the reality. So whether we believe in climate change or not, it doesn't change the reality that the climate is changing. Whether we think that it is us who are causing the change or not, whether we have the power to reverse it or not, the reality is that it is changing. The other thing that is a reality, this is a fact, it's not an opinion, is that the Earth is a kind of bowl containing a finite number of chemicals. It has a weight, it has a mass, which means it's material, and it's not imaginary. And the resources of this planet, the amount of iron or gold or nickel in the planet is finite. It's the same amount. It doesn't, there is some degree of exchange between Earth and the other bodies in space. We know that meteorites fall on Earth and bring more material, but water, for example, the amount of water in the planet is more or less constant. It hasn't changed since millions of years. The amount of water that we can drink, is also finite. So whether we like it or not, those resources are finite, which means if we waste them, if we damage it too much, we destroy the very things we need to survive in this planet. Can the planet do without us? Absolutely, probably better than with us. As spirits, can we migrate to other places? Yes. Will we carry the consequences, the spiritual consequences, for misusing the talents that were given to us to look after? Absolutely. So from a spiritist perspective, if we bring this massive international subject all the way back down to us, each single one of us, even from a selfish perspective, what do I want? I want to do the best I can to preserve and look after the talents, including the environment, that the Master or God gave me to use in this lifetime, so that when I go back to spirit, I can go back to a better place, rather than have to come back to the place that I wrecked to face the consequences for what I've done, or go to somewhere worse. It's a simple question. It's a simple choice in that respect. Although the individual choices may be complicated, we only answer for what we do or do not do. So in terms, you mentioned the election, here in the UK, so many people don't go out to vote. And because they don't think that their individual actions are going to count for anything. So many people say, well, if I'm just, if I throw one plastic bag, if I recycle one plastic bag, it's not going to save the planet, is it? No, but if everybody thinks alike, then nothing's done. But if we start, more and more of us start taking more and more responsibility, individual responsibility for our choices, then we can make a difference. Because the reality doesn't change whether we believe it or not. It is what it is.
Yeah, Elmo is not here today, who is one of our directors, but he always say, right, time will take care of people. Eventually they'll go back to the spiritual world. Anyone else? Any other questions? Comments? No? Joe? No? Okay.
Well, João, if
yes.
you allow me.
Go ahead, Ruth.
When you say that one party is not concerned and the other one is, you have to see what they are actually saying and what they're actually looking at. So I'm going to leave at that. But if you look at your words, I don't think it is either one or the other. I think, like Tanya said, if we all do our part personally, we will be able to have a better world. But if we are obliged by what the government tell us that we must do, then taking away our peace of mind, our freedom, then it becomes a dangerous world. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, it's always, we, of course, we are not going to enter into politics here. We never do. I think that what Tanya brought to us is very important, right? The necessity to look deeper, to go deeper into finding information and finding resources that are impartial, which is very difficult to find nowadays, right? So Tanya, your last words then, if nobody has any other questions, just wrap it up.
Just to say thank you very much for this opportunity. It's been absolutely lovely, especially, you know, to do this work with you and see some of you. And I hope I haven't offended anyone. And, you know, we need to be kind to ourselves as well, because it is difficult sometimes, you know, to make certain choices, and we do get it wrong. And when we get it wrong, as it's being said, you know, let's try and learn from it and move on rather than just beat ourselves up. You know, we don't want to. The other thing, just a tiny little thing that came to mind, you mentioned that I work with substance misuse, and I'm forever telling people there's a big difference between needing and wanting. So when we are out there using the resources of our planet, enjoying our lives as well as we can, let's from time to time ask ourselves, you know, do I really need this, or do I just want it? And just go from there.
Yeah, that's normally what we want is not always what we need, right? And then most of the time it's not, right? Okay. Thank you very much, Tanya. It was a pleasure. You know, we will invite you again, because we like to have this sort of conversations, discussions. So you know, and I know people here have been happy in having you. Those that watched you on the United States Spiritist Federation talk, and now today, you know, we have people already sending messages here thanking it. So for those that come to our Sunday meetings, next Sunday is the first Sunday of the month. So be studying in the greater world, and then we'll have the Q&A session. And I'm going to invite Zoraida to do our final prayer. Zoraida, you there? You're on mute, Zoraida.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
To our spiritual world, spiritual benefactors who have come here in preparation for our dear speaker today, Tanya. With our hearts full of gratitude, we thank you for allowing us to open this window of so much learning and understanding what our planet is all about. Not only to care for ourselves, but the planet itself, because the planet then will take care of us. So we thank you, Tanya. We thank you so that we can leave with a better understanding of this environment, the importance of taking care and giving all that we can to help us live better lives, not only for ourselves, but the future generation, for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grands, all that are to live in this beautiful planet that our Father has allowed us to be here today. So let's take all that we have learned here and work with it, starting today, tomorrow, and forevermore. We are so grateful. We thank you. We ask as we leave here today to keep ourselves with our prayers in our hearts for those that are going through so much of heartache, of pain, and suffering. Keep ourselves enlightened with prayers and asking our Father to assist us, spiritual world, our guardian angels, all that are here, protecting and helping us. We are so grateful. We thank you. And as we leave here today, dear Father, may we continue with our prayers, continue with our studies, and return again next week and throughout the week. We thank you, dear Lord. And with that in mind, we ask permission to close this meeting today. So be it.